Rivia, population 1,234. In that, 253 non-humans. September the 25th, 1268, a riot erupts. A massacre ensues. The streets run with the blood of elves and dwarves. One person finds the courage to face the raging crowd.
The Second War between Nilfgaard and the Northern Kingdoms ended with the Cintrian Peace in April 1268. Nilfgaard was pushed behind Yaruga after a series of defeats. But war is not only about shifting pawns and borders on big strategic maps, but above all about suffering. Suffering of those affected by the war, burned villages and towns, destroyed crops and killed animals, hundreds of orphaned children and broken families, poverty and all-encompassing misery in such circumstances are daily bread, especially in kingdom that lies on the border of Nilfgaard. As a result of the war, human dislike for elves, dwarves and gnomes also increased. Hatred was also present in a small town called Rivia. Dwarves and other non-human inhabitants lived in a specially separated district. Although many of them had nothing to do with the war, all of them, without exception, were considered guilty of war crimes committed by their relatives. Propaganda paintings and markings were hung all over the city. Some local premises introduced a ban on entry for non-humans, and non-humans themselves were seen mostly with great disgust or pure hatred. The massacre began on September 25, 1268. The day did not initially stand out from other post-war landscapes. People struggled to make ends and nobody wanted to get in trouble. According to one version, it all began with the war orphan Nadia Esposito, who from the very morning faced the effects of excessive drinking the previous day. When the young noblewoman felt better, she desired to walk around the bazaar. There, as a joke, she wanted to overturn the merchant's stalls. Eventually, she hit a stall which belonged to a dwarf who, without biting his tongue, scolded her from the top to bottom. Some say he was also supposed to use physical violence against her. Some peasants stood in the defense of the lady. The dwarf quickly summoned his brothers and a fight broke out. Over time, more and more individuals joined the conflict. In the blink of an eye, the entire bazaar and then the rest of the city was involved in the massacre. Others in turn claimed that this was not a pure coincidence but an inside job. How else could you explain the quick appearance of cars with weapons on the streets? The intervention of the army from the nearby castle also seems to be delayed for whatever reason. Some even came up with the theory that Nilfgaardian forces were involved in this, wanting to divide society and destabilize the country. Most, however, are blaming this on the common characteristics of the local population: xenophobia, rudeness, and limited mental capabilities. No matter what you believe, the results remain the same. In less than an hour, 184 people were killed. Almost half of them are women and children. The loss felt most strongly on the part of the minority, which were representatives of the older races. Geralt, who at that time was in one of the inns with his dwarven friends, decided to get involved for the last time. He slew a few humans. White Wolf would probably kill all of them if only he didn't hesitate. A boy who begged for mercy just seconds ago ruthlessly stabbed him in the stomach with a pitchfork. Geralt knelt. The young man ran away as if terrified of what he had just done. The forks themselves slipped out of the Witcher's body. With the rest of his strength trying to get up, the Witcher fell into a pool of his own blood. Everything around seemed to lose focus. The sounds of the fight a moment ago so clear now seemed to be suppressed. Geralt saw the mob give way, saw his friends running out with weapons from the inn. He wanted to call them to him, but he shook blood. The enraged crowd seemed to calm down. But the sky became very gloomy, and the terrible chill overwhelmed everyone in the street. Shortly after the slaughter began, two sorcerers, Triss Merigold and Yennefer of Wengerberg, entered the city by gallop. They were going to meet Geralt of Rivia. The sight of the massacre united them. Triss was overwhelmed by a fear she had not felt since the days of Sodden. Fear paralyzed hands and mouth. She feared terribly for her life and withdrew almost immediately. Yennefer, on the other hand, looked like the embodiment of pure fury. Lightning fell from her hands and eyes. But even such a powerful sorceress wasn't able to cope with the mob. The first stone flew near her ear. The second hit the shoulder, the third caused her to faint. Merigold came back for her. She wasn't scared, but determined, cold and furious. Next stones flew towards the sorceress, and with them, javelins and everything that people found at hand. Merigold didn't budge. Together with Yen, she casted a spell, but not the one she intended. The sky got dark. Clouds suddenly gathered over the city, and the cold pierced everyone on the street. The devastating hail of Merigold, a spell never to be repeated, flooded the city with ice balls the size of chicken eggs. Those who didn't manage to escape fell like flies, wading in icy blood. Fortunately, Yennefer managed to create a barrier to protect the sorceress. Shortly after the hail suddenly subsided, soldiers from the castle fell into the square and the massacre ended. The hail was a terrible disaster for the city, and so men who had moments ago tried to kill a dwarf by smashing his head against a wall, now sobbing, looked at what remained of his house. In Rivia, all was quiet. If it had not been for the 200 massacred corpses and some burning houses, you might have thought that nothing had happened.